Two men were arrested in Brockton, Massachusetts on May 5, 1920. After appearing at a garage to pick up a car the police believed was used in a robbery. Both had pistols on them, along with anarchist literature, and Vanzetti was carrying shotgun shells. The two men in question are Ferdinando Nicola Sacco and Bartolomeo Vanzetti. You didn't know that? Sacco and Vanzetti were accused of the murders of Frederick Parmenter, a paymaster, and Alessandro Berardellini, a security guard, during a robbery of almost $16,000. And in 1920, that was a lot of money. From a shoe company called the Slater Morrill Shoe Company on Pearl Street in South Braintree, Massachusetts, on the afternoon of April 15th, 1920. Vanzetti was initially tried and convicted of an armed robbery in nearby Bridgewater, so there was more than one robbery, Bridgewater, Massachusetts, that occurred the previous year. Not only did they steal money, but they shot the security guard apparently and the paymaster. So they're murderers and stealers. Doesn't your heart bleed for these guys? Oh, how unfortunate these two innocent men were deprived of their civil liberties. Both men were tried for the murders and convicted. After several failed appeals, Sacco and Vanzetti were executed in the electric chair, along with a third man, Celestine Maderos, who had confessed to the murder. Many aspects of both trials were challenged at the time and since for being highly prejudicial against the two men. This has to do with Barack Obama, that's why I'm reading this. And you see that what seems on the face of it to be a typical robbery gets pretty involved. In particular, the presiding judges in both cases of several appeals were seen by some as forcing the trial towards conviction and execution. When the dude confessed, the guys were found with guns. Oh, but you see, they were anarchists, and they deserve special treatment. Oh, okay. They're political prisoners. Oh, yeah, right, I got it. Sacco and Vanzetti both claimed to be victims of social and political prejudice, and both claimed to be unjustly convicted of the crime for which they were accused. However, they did not attempt to distance themselves from their fellow anarchists, nor their belief in violence as a legitimate weapon against the government. Oh, they're patriots. Oh, God bless them. Man, I'm going to have to put this picture on my wall. I found two patriots, unsung. Well, maybe somebody's been singing about them, but I just now learned of them today. Their controversial trial attracted enormous international attention. I wonder why. Wonder why. What does this have to do with Barack Obama? Enormous international attention, with critics accusing the prosecution and Judge Webster Thayer of improper conduct and of allowing anti-Italian, anti-immigrant, and anti-anarchist sentiment to prejudice the jury. But that is outrageous. Prominent Americans such as Felix Frankfurter and Upton Sinclair, and I've already heard about these two guys. Maybe it'll become plain. Upton Sinclair was a socialist. Frankfurter was a law enforcement judge type dude. May have even actually become a member of the Supreme Court. These two guys publicly sided with citizen-led Sacco and Vanzetti committees in an ultimately unsuccessful opposition to the verdict. Typical. America's a police state. Police state. Police state. The executions elicited mass protests in New York, London, Amsterdam, and Tokyo, worker walkouts across South America, and riots in Paris, Geneva, Germany, and Johannesburg. The American embassy in Paris was besieged by protesters, and the facade of the Moulin Rouge was wrecked. On August 23, 1977, we're getting up to the present day, Massachusetts Governor Michael Dukakis signed a proclamation declaring any stigma and disgrace. I thought Dukakis was Greek. Any stigma and disgrace should be forever removed from the names of Nicola Sacco and Bartolomeo Vanzetti, Dukakis said, "We are not here to say whether these men are guilty or innocent. How dare you point fingers at these immigrant workers? We are here to say that the high standards of justice which we in Massachusetts take such pride in..." Oh, really? The high standards. So, Dukakis was upset in 1977. Okay, here's some background for those two of you who are still listening. Sacco was born in Foggia, Tormagoria, somewhere in Italy. I don't know, maybe it was, who knows, over yonder. He was a shoemaker. Well, no wonder. Shoemaker, immigrated to the United States at the age of 17. Vanzetti was a fishmonger, born in Villa Faleto, Cuneo, who arrived in the United States at age 20. Both men arrived in the United States in 1908, although they did not meet until 1917. As with other anarchists, the two opposed U.S. participation in the war in Europe. Anti-war radicals they were. In need of money they were. And moved to Mexico they did. To do what? To avoid the draft. Draft dodgers they were. The men were followers of Luigi Galliani, who was an Italian anarchist who advocated revolutionary violence, including bombing and assassination. Well, years have passed and we're over it now. But the legacy remains. Galliani published both Subversive Chronicle, a periodical that advocated violent revolution, and an explicit bomb-making manual called La Salute in Voi. At the time, Italian anarchists ranked as the top of the government's list. Yeah, that damn government. All I do is pick on people. Won't let them alone. The Italian anarchists were at the top of the government's list of dangerous enemies. Wow, war on terror sounds like. Homeland Security sounds like. Patriot Act it sounds like. Maybe that's why this has something to do with Barack Obama. These, at the time, Italian anarchists were on the top of the list of dangerous enemies and had been identified as suspects in several violent bombings and assassination attempts. William Ayres and Bernardine Dorn and friends put bombs everywhere, planned to make more bombs. They committed armed robberies, not necessarily those two, but members of the group. And they were let go, let free, because the FBI infiltrated their group with informers, and that's bad. That's invasion of civil liberties. I bet you the ACLU might have had a hand in that, and that's the reason why Bernardine and Bill are on the street today. Because if that's not infringement of civil liberties, that's a bomb is just like speech, the same as speech. You burn a flag, that's just speech, freedom of speech. Give somebody a hand signal, a victory salute, it's just freedom of speech. Some people shoot you the bird, some people put a bomb in your house, under your car. It's just speech, that's all it is. They've been identified as suspects in several violent bombings and assassination attempts. So they didn't actually hurt anybody, it was just an attempt. Even an attempted mass poisoning. This book, which is called Subversive Chronicle in English, was pressed. See, they suppressed their literature. Man, if that's not un-American, I don't know what it is. They suppressed their literature, and their author, Galliani, along with 8 of his closest associates, were deported. Gosh, man, the government is so bad. I wonder if Bush did that, or changed it. Most of the remaining Gallianists sought to avoid arrest by becoming inactive, going underground. However, some 60 militants considered themselves still engaged in a class war that required retaliation. For 3 years, they waged an intermittent campaign of terror. Oh, don't say that word. Terror. Don't say that word. What else are you going to call it? Terrorism. Directed at politicians, judges, and other federal and local officials. Now, that's what Bill Ayres did. He's a hero. Because we're open-minded today, we accept people who have different opinions, and we give them the freedom to speak freely under the Second Amendment or whatever it is. Put a firebomb under a judge's car in his house with children inside the house asleep. That's just freedom of speech. That's all. You spray paint slogans on the sidewalk in front of the house. That's just speech. Burn a flag, drag a flag behind you in a parade, anti-war parade. That's just speech. That's all it is. Don't need to get upset. A crucifix and a jar of urine. That's just speech. Just art. Just art. Like some people paint pictures. Some people paint bombs. It's expression. Chief among the dozen or more terrorist acts the Gallianists committed or are suspected of committing was the bombing of Attorney General Mitchell Palmer's home in 1919. Why didn't these Italians, whoever they were, just go back to where they came from? They hated the United States. And why didn't they just go home? In that incident, one Gallianist, Carlo Valdenosi, and an associate of Sacco and Vanzetti, was killed when a bomb intended for Attorney General Palmer exploded in his hands as he was placing it. Poor guy. Incendiary pamphlets found at the scene of this and several other midnight bombings on the same evening were signed, quote, "the anarchist fighters," unquote. Several Gallianist associates have been suspected and or interrogated about their roles in the bombing incidents. What does that have to do with Barack? Nothing. These are guys that just lived in the same country. They didn't even live in his neighborhood. 2 days before Sacco and Vanzetti were arrested, a Gallianist named Andre Salcedo jumped to his death from the Bureau of Investigation offices at Park Row in New York. There was dark speculation that Salcedo may have been pushed out the window or possibly dropped as he was held out the window by his ankles. If that ain't torture, I don't know what it is. Cops do that. I was walking down a sidewalk one night. We'll forget that.